for your patience. But okay, and Kat, if you may mute or turn your volume down so there's no echo. Um, but yes, well, um, okay, but yes, thank you everybody for your patience. This is the October Our Revolution Howard County meeting. Just want to make sure people can see my um, on Zoom. Yes, okay, got it. Yeah, I just want to go over real quick tonight's agenda, and I should also thank you to those both tuning in virtually and in person. We do have pizza and some refreshments. Thank you, Kat, for getting that. We're going to be trying to make that a regular thing for our monthly meetings now to encourage in-person attendance. Although, thank you to all. My name is Jake Burdett. I am the co-chair of Our Revolution Howard County. Kat, we is going to be moderating our panel discussion. Yeah, so we're going to go over ground rules, do a brief introduction. People, if this is their first meeting, any updates on steering committees that Our Revolution Howard County has, so that people can get involved. Because we do a lot outside of the monthly meetings. Got some calls that the organization could use assistance with right now. Treasurer's report, backs from our committees and just what we've been up to in general. And really the big committees that are active right now is Solidarity and International Solidarity Committee, Rent Stabilization, as we talked about at the last meeting. There's essentially a plastic burning plant that they're trying to open up on River Hill, a company called WR Grace trying to do that. Our Revolution Howard County's gotten involved in the fight there's the Columbia Association Watch Committee that Kat's been leading. Plug our social media stuff, some upcoming events, and then get to the main event, which of course is the panel discussion around how to prepare for another Trump presidency and other future threats to democracy. And so without any further ado, yes, the ground rules, especially for people on Zoom, talking, just you could keep your thing muted. If you got something to say, you could use the hand raise portion, and we'll moving. So if you do make a comment or ask, please keep it to a minute or less, or we will have to cut you off politely. And of course, be respectful. And so those are the ground rules. Maybe we could do quick introductions again, especially for the people who are new or have been to an Our Revolution Howard County meeting. And here's the things that, introductions: who you are, where you live, how did you hear about Our Revolution Howard County, in, and anything else you think might be worth sharing. Al, you're no stranger to Our Revolution, but this might be your first Howard County meeting. So if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks a lot, Jake. Yeah, Hal Ginsberg. I'm Mr. Monk. Get your emails on my list. So,
thank you, Hal. And
Brown was involved with DSA Baltimore, so I saw this from them and did in the panel discussion topic. I heard about Our Revolution. Admirer of Sanders for a long time, so I knew about the organization and we had chapters so in Maryland. So anyway, so so far he's really interested in the context plan.
yeah, no, and you said you're in Gwynn Oak in Baltimore. And remind me one more time the name.
Jonathan.
Jonathan, got it. Well, thank you. Thank our allies in the Greater Baltimore DSA. Thank you, Ida. Yes. You have been to a meeting before, but if you want to remind the others.
Mainly supplemented that village elections are conducted in an open and transparent way, and we activity that use that. I think that's something Jim Rouse expected with that. Second thing is supporting every village rep for Open Mills is to make sure that outdoor pools and swim center and other things are included in your membership as a lien payers if you're in good standing. In other words, if you're paying for it, and the money is what I'm hearing that the analysis. Long-term care with the ACC. So looking for people to turn on.
Yes. Well, thank you, Ginny. Certainly a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the Columbia Association, but also, county politics. So thank you for being here. Hello, Ying. And to our virtual panelists, real quick, or audience members. Mr. Bates, if you would like to or are comfortable introducing yourself.
I'm Matt Bates. I'm a lifelong union activist, retired now, journalist also. I'm in Montgomery County, and honestly, I tuned in mostly because I really want to hear the discussion about how we're going to deal with MAGA going forward, particularly if the election goes badly.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. And we've heard from the Hayes before, and so we're gonna we don't have to say that again. But Patricia Fowler, you want to, if you're comfortable introducing yourself.
I can tell you this is
Okay, got it. Cool. Thank you. And Roger, I know you were at our I think our June, but you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm just here to listen to what you all have to say and learn more about your group. But I'm also having a medical issue, so I may not last. I just got cramps, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's no worries. I wish you luck with that.
I was hoping to just hide in the background.
We will not call on you again. Sorry about
Okay,
that.
thanks.
Last,
right.
but not um if you're available and comfortable introducing yourself. Um but if not, also move on. Oh, there you go.
Oh, was that me? Okay, I
Yeah.
broke up a little bit, and I had a feeling I was the last one. Hi, I'm Kiana Angela. I am I live in Columbia, Oakland Mills area. And I heard about our Revolution Howard County from Jake actually, which is also kind of the last question, is that I'm also a member of Howard County for Free Palestine, which is where I connected with Jake from. But I haven't been able to catch any of the meetings. So I'm interested in like hearing more about what you guys are working on right now, and getting to know you guys a little bit better. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you all for coming again, both in person and virtually. And so steering committee, just real quick, Kat and I, co-chairs there. Francis is a treasurer. Secretary is here tonight. Oh yes, that's right. He's traveling. He's traveling this month, and so is Malik. Malik is in South Africa now, and so got some international members. Anna and are also not here tonight, but Sanad holding it down for that large. We do have one vacancy on the steering committee if anybody is interested in. We have serving on the steering committee, and so again, real quick. I kind of ran through them, but we've got a lot of different committees. The more active ones are the Solidarity, Columbia Association Watch, tenant organization and tenant and rent stabilization efforts, and then the Stop WR Grace plastic burning issue. But trying to get our Board of Education tracking committee off the ground with Sarah Pan and committees that aren't particularly active, but if there's people interested in leading that. It's county legislation, state legislation committee, electoral committee, community visibility or outreach to tables at public events, spread the word about the club, direct service committee being on a plan monthly social events. And we do have a Google form if you want to sign up for any of those committees. I can put in the Zoom chat when I get a chance. But in terms of what we kind of really immediately need help with, our steering committee person who had stepped down from, she ran our social media. And so if anybody would be interested, big need, also designing a website for our Revolution Howard County at public events, at tabling, here to help onboard new members, which we did get a member this past month. So we have to onboard them, for example, or again, planning social events or any of the committees that we named. In terms of the treasurer's report, in terms of money in the account,
No changes.
no. Okay. We do have to, you, Robert, and we try to go to the bank to set up an official, club account, and we found out we didn't have all, and so we've got to take a few more steps to get converted from personal to a organizational account, and so we will continue to work on that. In terms of what we've been up to, I think this hasn't been updated from last. Basically, we are planning on publishing a response piece to. There's now been, I think, 4 I'm going to call it propaganda pieces, support of this $140 million plus, you know, build while tearing down the perfectly good Central Branch Library. That was, you know, slated to be a sole source contract to Howard Hughes Corporation. And so op-eds trying to manufacture consent around this idea. And so Rob did a response that we hope to publish, get published soon. Yeah, we've just been continuing to, you know, speak on what happened with what's been happening with WR Grace and the plastic burning facility, and was featured in the news, speaking to the reporter about some of the danger involved with that, and both the Baltimore Fish Bowl and Business Monthly. And so again, we didn't get a chance to update the slides, but we will be sure to email that out to our list. But yeah, so I won't, you know, go too in depth on the stuff because just talked about it a little bit, and we might do our next on it for a town hall around this issue. But again, a very notorious corporation, WR Grace, notorious enough where there's movies about mass poisoning events that they've been involved with in Massachusetts and Montana, and to the point where there was literally a John Travolta movie in the 90s called A Civil Action about how they poisoned a town. And so this is why community members are very skeptical of this facility that they're trying to set up in Columbia, and are not just taking them for their word that this is going to be safe and we can trust them. And so I guess where we're at right now is the state Maryland Department of Environment has to approve for WR Grace to do this, but they're not going to make a ruling until all the county zoning issues are figured out. And so there was over 200 public comments submitted to the Maryland Department of Environment. They now have to go through all the comments substantively, but also they're not going to make a ruling until the county out. And so the residents have filed zoning complaint. The residents, but they just filed an appeal, and so now they're going through the appeal process. They will like separate zoning complaint at some point, and they've also filed a zoning regulation amendment. The county council, or which will eventually go to the county council to basically set up a buffer space, the type of research and development activities that WR Grace is trying to do, and rural areas. And so that requiring that buffer zone would make it so that WR Grace could not go forward with this project. And so there's a couple of different coals in the fire for how the community members could potentially get this blocked, but it's all going to take several months to play out. And so we're going to keep you all in the loop. Again, we might do a town hall for our November meeting on this topic. And even if we don't, we'll keep everybody in the loop so that people can be helpful. And so, yeah, Jenny. Yep.
What is the county?
Yeah. Great question. So the county executive, he has been asked point. So Brooks fundraiser in Columbia, and people knew that Cal was going to be there, and so they went. The former co-chair of the Stop WR Grace group, her name's Lisa Kraus. She approached Calvin at the fundraiser and, you know, said, hey, you know, I live in next to WR Grace. They're trying to, you know, poison our community, and you kind of cut her off. I wasn't there, but from my understanding, Lisa, my office has heard about this issue. We're well aware what we can do about it. There is nothing we can do to stop it, is what bluntly told her twice, that she's aware of it and there's nothing he can do to stop it. Of course, you know as well as I do, probably even much more than I do, that that's not true. There's a lot that the county executive can do, whether it's the zoning regulation amendments or, you know, DPZ with the zoning complaints and the appeals process. Yes, that is reading between the lines, and I'm, you know, trying to make sure that all the group aren't as familiar with, you know, how these politicians work are on that same page of the council members. You know, I don't think we've gotten a chance to talk to each and every single one, but the community members had a rally um, uh, in either late August, early September. Liz Walsh went there in support. She submitted a letter to Maryland Department of Environment opposed to this project. I think there's been talks with Deb Young, but you know, it's if the county executive feels a certain way, we know certain council members are also going to go that way, and so that's, you know, Opal Jones and David Youngman and Christiana Rigby. I don't think we've like gotten word from them directly on where they're at, but I would guess that the county executive. And so, yeah, it's all going to be about certain council members so that all these strategies, whether it's a zone regulation amendment, zoning complaint, one of them works to get this killed. And I'm, you know, that's what I'm trying to convince the group. It doesn't matter how good your legal arguments are. If you don't apply political pressure alongside it, they're gonna, even if you're completely right on the law, they're gonna, and it happens, you know, all the time. And so, again, there's an ongoing effort. Gate everybody's interests, and you know, we're going to keep people in the loop on how to get involved. You know, it's been mostly River Hill and the Cedar Creek community, but apparently this is also adjacent to the Hickory Ridge community, and I don't think they. So, unfortunately, Viviana from our steering committee, she lives in Hickory Ridge, but she's not here today. But if anybody in the audience is in Hickory Ridge or knows anybody in Hickory Ridge, you know, the village boards, I think, should be speaking up, and just residents in general. Without any further ado, and I'm sorry we're about 5 or 10 minutes behind here, but Ying, if you would be okay with I don't know.
Okay, so Malik on the steering committee and has always been reporting on this. He's on travel, like Jake mentioned. Like some of the activities, a couple of these actions are actually ongoing. So I'll talk about that. So we start with a few of the event meeting and this meeting. The August 22nd part of the ongoing action. We reported that last week, but just for those of you who weren't week, August 22nd, we had a press conference. This is since the genocide began last year. So at its was a few high schools in Howard County. The students organized walkouts demanding and supporting the Palestinians. And usually Howard County has a policy walkout. Those are not school-sponsored events. They just have to get the permission from the school, make sure it doesn't interfere with any instructional activities, and these walkouts did not. However, because of the topic, high school specifically, the administrators told them that you can't have, they took away the Palestine, Gaza, apartheid, and genocide. So this is walkout specifically supporting the Palestinian people, that things happening in Gaza. I think the walkout happened towards the end of it last year, November, December, sometime, that time frame. To censor those words completely silenced the students and dehumanized the Palestinian people, and then it was contradictory to their own policies. Particular school, but that I think River Hill, that behavior was most egregious. So ACLU telling them this is violation of students' constitutional rights. You can't send. So they've been in communication with the school system, and then the Howard County for Free Palestine was involved, who live in the community, testified in front of the school board and demanding them to issue to the families, especially some of the students who were involved in the walkouts, families living in Palestine. They are directly impacted. This is not just some that nobody knows about and we don't really care. First of all, we're all taxpayers. Our money goes direct bombs. And the diplomatic political cover our government is providing for Israel to engage in the genocide. And these students, families and their own family members being killed and injured in the genocide to just erase their existence and silence their voice. It was pretty crazy to see that happening in Howard County, where the school board members and leaders always say, we support human rights, we acknowledge everyone, we're inclusive, all of that. So ACLU sent them a letter, say, do better. And activists is for the school system, and then to institute training for know your rights, training for the constitutional rights they have when they want to plan for more walkouts, and for the school system to unconditionally support these walkouts like they have with every other types of walkouts. Because I have been involved actually with students in the past working on other the issue of against genocide political is what administrators and staff members using that excuse is completely disingenuous. They support other issues, LGBTQ issues, Black Lives Matter, and equity in school. Things I do support, but to pick and choose which one you label as political, those signs, is really disingenuous. Your batteries. So long story short, that's the background and the statement of apology, September 26th, something like that, a few weeks ago. It even mentioned these walkouts were for supporting Palestine, for anti-genocide. It just says students had walkouts and we did not implement our policies consistently. To that, I apologize. So was you don't even acknowledge that Palestinians have humanity like the rest of us. To acknowledge that wrongdoing, you completely leave out the subject matter impacted, dehumanized. So what kind of apology is that? Anyway, so that's the through line for some of the recent testimony for school board. And then for the ongoing every other week, for the most part, the school board meets every other week on the Thursday. And those dates are listed here. So September 20, no, it's not there. Okay, where are those? I didn't do the report. I have to ask. The most recent one was actually October 10th. 2 weeks before that, and then 2 weeks before that, August 22nd was, and I had the testimony. And then the next meeting is the 24th. Who really cares about these issues and the students in our county, impacts everyone, impacts our tax dollars. We need to, everyone who's making the decision, and scream at them to say stop. That we have something, we can do a lot about it, and have them get involved, testify in front of Office of Human Rights in Howard County, which is almost like a misnomer. Heard testimony from us many, many times. They refuse to do anything. So I don't want to take up too much time, but the being involved with Howard County for Free Palestine, you can go on, if we can provide maybe a link in or the social media page. So anyone wants to be involved, get the word out, because respond to more people telling them this is just wrong. It's hypocrisy that we're going to call that there was a vigil held at the near the mall. It was well attended, and then we did coverage. I think the media report said about 100 people were there. This was held on October 6th, intentionally to highlight that has been going on, the most recent genocide in Gaza for the last year. And these things did start October 7th, despite what the corporate media wants to tell you. And it was well attended. We had some really, and people were energized, and people were waving signs, and then there was a lot of traffic driving by. It was a Sunday, so the majority of the people did support the cause. I think a majority of people actually do have conscience and have their humanity intact. It's our leaders that are completely out of touch with the majority of the country. And then is along with that theme of letting the community know, people have their voice heard, is there's a bi-weekly vigil. So you can see here, October 13th, this past Sunday. Was it Sunday?
Yep.
Yesterday.
Yep.
Yeah. Recent one. So the committee, the Howard County for Free Palestine Steering Committee, have every 2 weeks to have a vigil held at the corner of Broadway and Little Patuxent Parkway. That's where that MedStar Health. There's a lot of traffic, 2 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Just show up with whatever signs, flag and kafia, any message you want to bring to support the Palestinian people, because particular region is just what our country is doing in this particular unbelievably appalling. So we want to do that, and anyone on every other Sunday. And then if you follow the Howard County for Free some of the planning actions, there was a day of healing. Members Anna hosted at her house on September 28th, and some of the people in attendance here were at that event. It was really event I heard, and people gathered together not to celebrate because it's just so our hearts are broken, and that's what we want to do, because as soon as we all become numb and the genocide and then the government's any kind of a horrible behavior would go unchecked, we can take a break and really make sure we have self-care and support each other, lean on each other, but we can't really look away. I know Kiana is on the committee. If you have anything to add, feel free to.
We have a lot of people in the waiting room and they're waiting for our panel. I'm so sorry to interrupt
Oh, sure.
you.
Oh, no, I'm done. Didn't mean to.
Yes.
Okay.
You can mute yourself on that one.
Well, I'll let
Yeah,
Jake
yeah,
come
I'll
back
come.
here.
Yeah, and
Here.
Edward, do you mind if you actually move here, just because I need to use that charger there for my computer to make you move around. But yes, sorry about that. Sorry, we started about 10 minutes late. So yeah, we're a little bit behind. Sorry about that, but thanks for being patient. Yeah, we are going to go ahead and cut to the main event. Only is we're still going strong with our rent stabilization tenant organizing efforts. Are about to form the first ever tenant union in Howard County at Columbia Point in they are now having public tenant union meetings. They just have to have their first election to elect leadership, and that should be the last step before they can be official. Columbia Association meetings and watch committee going as always. Monthly social event with the Rent Stabilization Coalition celebrating our 1-year anniversary, October 23rd at 7 p.m. Also a fundraiser with Congressperson Summer tomorrow night in DC at 5:30 p.m. Co-host on the fundraising committee, and so people would want to willing dollars to support the newest squad member in Pennsylvania. We'll send an email that, and I encourage people to donate. But yeah, sorry about the wait there.
Stop the share on.
Yes, we will transition now to our panel. Gonna have Kat now share.
I'm not gonna share, but I want to pin Joseph. So okay, can everyone hear me? I think I'm still on mute. Can people hear me? Yes. Okay, very good. Sorry. I just wanted to preface who we're having as panelists today. We have Joseph Guy-Varghese, Executive Director of Our Revolution National. Ida Kenna from the DSA, Greater DSA, and I guess Baltimore, and Eduardo Ribeiro from Friends of Latin America right here in Howard County. I just read this morning, a Wall Street Journal poll, if you're gonna believe mainstream media, 2 percentage points of each other, Harris and Trump, in 6 of 7 battleground states. Apparently Harris is leading in Arizona, Georgia, and Michigan. Trump is ahead in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Nevada. And so we really do need to be aware of that. I'm going to thank all the panelists, first of all, for being here, and I'm going to pick each one of you for each question, but I'm going to give everyone else a chance also to answer the same question. But the first question, I'm going to start with Joseph. What do you believe is the single biggest threat if Trump is elected, and why?
Well, first I want to say thank you for having me. My name is Joseph Kivaris. I'm the executive director of Our Revolution. I apologize. My voice is a little under the weather. I've got a sick toddler at home, but I hope folks can hear me. All right. So in terms of, what is the biggest threat from Donald Trump? I would argue that my biggest fear with Donald Trump is we're about to elect somebody who has no respect for the rule of law. And what's held our democracy together over the last 200, almost 50 years is that we have had elected officials who have respected the norms and institutions of democracy. From starting with George Washington, when he decided to walk away from the White House after he had served his time in office, up until the most recent presidents, we've always had elected officials who understand that they've got to play by a set of rules. And in this case, we have someone who understands that the rules only work if people respect them and if we all play along. And what Donald Trump has figured out is he doesn't have to play along. And the biggest threat here is we're about to elect someone a second time. And not only is does he have no respect for the rule of law, but he also understands after his first term that there were guardrails around him in the form of advisors, courts, others. I think this time he understands that he needs to make sure that he has enablers surrounding him. And I feel like that's one of the biggest fears. He's not going to be constrained by the rule of law, and neither are those people around him.
Thank you. I'm going to the same question to Ida.
Yeah, I think, honestly, my biggest done. And he's also made it clear no reservation about Israel's illegal expansionism, much less the killing of civilians. He's kind of seemingly jokingly spoke about the loss of civilian life, but in the long run, fear with him is just how much more quickly planetary ecocide happen, because with the loss of the rule of law in our very neoliberalist country that is at least managing to still have an EPA, Trump is going to liquidate regulatory agencies. We're going to see collapse of environments very quickly, not just in the US, but there, it's going to be a really dark, intense step into this fascism for world imperialism, where the global north isn't even trying to keep yard livable anymore. Not that it's always done a great job. And then I guess in the middle, two things between ecocide and the just wanton genocide of Israel is just like what's going to happen to civil rights in this country. And like first and foremost, trans people to migrants. He's obviously been pretty clear about what he intends to do with us. And then activists to people speaking their mind and criticizing anything.
Okay, same question to Eduardo.
First, I need to say that I have no sympathy with Mr. Trump, but at the same time, I don't think he's, such exceptional bad guy, especially after we elected, Joe Biden. Crime Bill Joe, Jim Crow Joe, the people bankrolling this entire genocide that we've been watching on TV and social media. So I would even like tweak the title a little bit. I'm not going to change any questions, of course, because this is your event, but how to prepare to fight against threats to democracy in general. Under threats to democracy by both corporate parties right now. Because on Trump, it's as if we are living in this paradise, this democracy, preserving this thing. And is it worth preserving it the way it is? I think all of those questions. I think we already know what Trump is capable of. We've been through 4 of his years. So in a way, we are prepared to oppose him. What I've been seeing during these 4 years of Harris and Biden is that people who used to criticize Trump for the same things that Harris and Biden are doing now are quiet. Not only quiet, they are actively supporting the people who are perpetrating this genocide. So yes, so I think back, he's going to try to do everything he tried to do it the first time around. It may be much worse this time around, but at least there'll be some resistance, which I don't see much against Biden at this moment, especially from his own party and those adjacent groups that act independent, but tell you to vote for. So I think 2 things will happen if Trump is elected. All the horrible things that we know he's capable of. One is going to be general amnesia. People for using Trump of doing, they condoned when it was done by Obama and the Clintons and Biden and Harris. That's going to happen. The other thing is that the Democratic Party is going to the heck out of it because they use the causes we care about when there is a Republican president to fundraise on it. And when they have the power to change it, to do something about it, they don't. So those are my opinions on this question specifically.
All right, the next question. In January of 2020, there was the January 6th insurrection. What threats do you believe are likely before or during the election, and how should we prepare for this possibility? And we'll start with Joseph.
So, look, I think Donald Trump is going to, whether win or lose, I think he's going to actively challenge the results. If Harris comes in first, if there is any doubt in terms of the margins, I think we're going to see the Trump-Vance ticket cry foul. I think they're going to organize. What they're smart about is organizing not just within the halls of power, but also on the streets. I think they're going to, challenge power and challenge the elections. And, what's the most damaging here is they've actually laid the groundwork by infiltrating election offices around the United States, by making sure that there is a factual basis for challenging results. They've taken over election boards. They've tried to slow down the counting. They've set up a predicate for challenging the results. And then I think they will unleash their shock troops. And I think that's something we're going to have to be ready for. I think January 6th is really just a small taste of what we're going to see unleashed. And I hope I'm wrong.
Okay. Ida, what do you think?
Is that they're going to try to contest election. Um, I don't know how much like anxiety I have about that. Hoping that like we don't end up with a Trump presidency, but honestly, like Eduardo said, like I'm not that excited about any way this goes. The thing that I'm most worried about, some degree of some kind of like insurrection, like maybe just state cap people try to like pull some shit in DC. But I like 2018, I did some anti-fascist thing, and like honestly, since like 2020, since you know, there's been, it seems like kind of a loss of militancy of the like alt-right and the MAGA that came after it. Like we have Patriot Front consolidated a lot, that kind of like helped lead to J6. But there hasn't been nearly as much of them in the news or of like similar militia movements quite the same way as 2021. On the other hand, like there's been reports, take this with a fat grain of salt, but there's been reports of Patriot Front like appearing in, I think it was Georgia and North Carolina as relief work. My main thing for wanting to combat that would be to say support leftist like relief work, mutual aid organizations like Mutual Aid Disaster Relief. And then today there was allegedly FEMA found like semi full of weapons that were allegedly, or like it was like a large truck that was allegedly some group was out hunting FEMA workers, and I haven't seen any more reporting on that, so who knows. Patriot Front has going on is this very bizarre attempt at like in relief work that is really scary. It is, and it learn and develop new skills, but I don't think it really makes for like a national insurrection of any serious threat to the state. But I do worry about them pushing program, you know, racist violence on the streets. I worry about them pushing stochastic violence any of over the years. I'm sure that we'll see some of that.
Eduardo, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I think, the first time around, they claimed they were surprised, they were caught by surprise. But if it happens again, I think they should be prepared, be able to claim. And I say claim because I doubt they were completely unprepared and unaware of what was going on. And just one thing, everything I say, so you guys know, is as an immigrant. I wasn't born and raised in this country. I've been here for a while, for a long time. I raised 2 kids here, but everything I see in this country, 2 countries that I know about, and especially the country where I came from. And this kind of insurrection happens in any of the countries I know about. And it's by the people who lost the states. They call those people democracy fighters, freedom fighters. Even if they're burning people alive on the streets, if they're burning public buildings, like in Nicaragua and in Bolivia. So for instance, they call them freedom fighters. And those are the Republicans, those are the Democrats. So, what happens to people in other countries, hail. And you guys are making a big deal. It has to be made a big deal out of it. But I want everybody to think about it when it happens in other, start to interfere and say, do not punish these criminals because they are freedom fighters. Thank you.
If re-elected in November, Trump and his allies have promised to take actions that would disenfranchise millions, suppress the right to vote, and limit voting access. How far do you think voter suppression will go? What tactics do you believe will be used by Trump and his administration? And how should we prepare for this? And we'll start with Joseph again.
Look, I think, just going back to my original response, I don't think Donald Trump has any illusion of what he's walking into. He maybe the first time he was elected, he fumbled around a little bit. He didn't know where the light switches were in the White House, didn't know where the nuclear buttons are. This time around, they understand where everything is. They have a plan, and it goes everything from policy to personnel. They've got a White House in waiting. Everyone's heard about Project 2025, which is their agenda, but it's also their personnel. They are ready to go in as shock troops and move an agenda as systematically as possible. I think voter suppression is one item. I think one is they're going to make sure they stay in power over time. But even that's just one aspect. I think they're going to gut, climate protections. They're going to move towards a model of what I would call is authoritarian state capitalism, no different than what we see in Russia or China. This is about enriching, right, themselves and those that support them. So that's where we're going to go. It's not just voter suppression. I think we're going to see suppression of laws, the gutting of government, privatization and plunder on a vast scale. And I think that's incredibly dangerous. And this is largely not just in service of profit, but it's also in service of power. I don't think these folks are going to leave once they get there. That is the hallmark of what we see with Putin, what we see in China, what we see in India, where a new model has emerged of state capitalism and under the pretense of democracy. And I think that's close to where we're going to end up if Donald Trump and his minions get back in power.
Ida, would you like to add anything to this? Or Eduardo, either?
Yes, I would say that third parties out for ballots everywhere in the country, and that's the Democrat. Not forget that the things we're accusing Trump of potentially doing if he's elected, and people are not doing enough to stop with that madness. This hypothetical government of this, Trump, pretending this is not happening right now. If this is not voter suppression, I don't know what you guys. And people mention, for instance, requiring identification to vote. This is going to disenfranchise so many people. I don't know, but I think liberals only care about poor people's votes. Because you know what, not having an ID don't disenfranchise you only from the election. You cannot get health care. You cannot apply for a job. Stop thinking about the value of people of color's votes and the value of votes for the liberal agenda, and think about them as human beings who deserve full access to all the resources the country has to offer. So yes, maybe requiring an ID will force liberals, to start getting people IDs to, really. I work in a hospital, and sometimes patients show up with nothing, no documents whatsoever registered. Let alone, check if they qualify for insurance or something like that. See many liberals or so-called progressives talking about that. It's always about the vote. It's their electoral value for the Democrats. Thank you.
Let me put my sound back on. Okay. All right, I'm going to start with Ida on this one. Donald Trump's administration initiated a sustained years-long effort to erase protections for LGBTQ plus people. This included an effort to define transgender out of existence, erode protections for transgender students and workers, and weaken access to gender-affirming healthcare that most transgender people already struggle to access. Trump has promised that if reelected, his administration will rescind federal policies that prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, and will assert that federal civil rights laws don't cover anti-LGBTQ plus discrimination. How would another Trump presidency impact the LGBTQ plus community, and how should we prepare for this?
I mean, it's definitely going to be bad, like Project 2025 in the first 100 days are do as much executive ordering as possible. I mean, the same way that like in his first 100 days, we got Title IX coverage. We got, I forget what, both versus something, the protections, trans kids in schools. But I think the thing is that where we are in history is that until like Obama, until late in Obama's term, trans people were pathologized out of enfranchisement as such. Like we had to completely, like as far as society was concerned, they misgendered us and dead named us, and we had no right to be any other way. And we never really got very far from that. All of the protections that we have right now that came from those executive orders, like the basic substance of the like trans stuff in the Equality Act, idea that like gender identity is a protect, which has significant reach in terms of what that can be deliberately harmed because of being trans ostensibly. However, that's not really the Republicans have felt the need to take, because their approach has been for the last few years since they started pushing like 600 bills a year in 2023. It's been like biological sex. That's how they're circumventing this question of gender identity. So prior to Obama, there wasn't like in all of these policies definition of sex as this like biological thing, even though that's like maybe how people thought about it, but so, like I hadn't got there yet. That's why it was a little bit easier to protect us from the idea of like social discrimination. And because of that, society has always just thought of us in a misgendering fashion as far as our assignment, as far as the way they look at you, as far as like a lot of your like the regular. So I don't know. I think the big things are going to be, we are going to see federal bans on HRT, like on hormone replacement therapy, bans affirming emotional, like behavioral therapies and things like that, especially for kids, which they're going to declare as child abuse and try to take kids from their parents. We're going to probably see in like reforms that we've had, which are very few in carceral settings, in the incarceration of migrants. We're going to see those reversed. A really big risk is going to annulment of our consideration in the Prison Rape Elimination Act. Things, because again, like they can call us whatever they want to call us biological sex wise, and they can be as like cis-centric as they want about that. We're like highly at risk of sexual abuse and murder. So like I do think that what we're going to see from Trump in terms of simply to do away with all of that consideration. And I am deeply frustrated that we haven't gotten really, I guess, firmer rights at all out of the like little momentary blip in which people have like learned a little bit about us, celebrated us in media representation. But yeah, I don't know. Sorry. I think it's really, 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 really crucial to have as much social infrastructure as possible to take care of each other. Like 14% of trans attempted suicide this year. Over 50% of them said it was because of recent events in their lives related to political developments. So we need to be looking out for kids, especially in general. We need to be having each other's backs, making sure people have access to hormones, etc.
Does anyone else want to weigh in?
No, that's excellent.
Well, I can't hear me. Okay. Something happened with my sound.
I think you're good.
Can you hear me? Okay. Let's go to the next question. During his first term, the Trump administration instituted a Muslim ban, tried to deport dreamers and others with temporary legal protection, separated families seeking asylum, and fought to build a wall at the US-Mexico border. I'm going to start with Eduardo this time. What do you expect will happen to dreamers with the second Trump presidency? Do you believe he will attempt to end DACA again? What can immigrants, particularly those from Latin America, expect if reelected? And do you foresee a difference in how immigrants will be treated at the border?
Yeah, I think for sure he's going to face the same resistance that the American society. I think he would have done it, fully if he could have. So I think it's important as well to not let our guard down, and that's why I say, be the government is your friend, because the ones we've had so far are not. And Trump, so he is certainly going to try to do that kind of stuff. The treatment at the border. Everybody was shocked seeing that picture of a cowboy CBP officer chasing Haitian immigrants and lassoing them. That was under. I think things will get any better for sure. They are not that great now. Waiting on those improvements still. What's going on from a Latin American perspective? More and more intervention in our affairs in South America and Central America and even Mexico, trying to choose the government that they want, that's more beneficial to the United States interest. It doesn't matter how miserable that's going to make. Great. So I think again we have to take responsibility, both Democrats going on. I think it's just more intervention and misery as Biden has. I'm glad you guys mentioned the Muslim ban. You guys remember we were banned, right, during the Muslim ban? Yeah, I have a little list here. It's Iran, Libya, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen. The same countries that are demonized by the Democrats. Actually, I'm sure if Obama hadn't destroyed Syria, wouldn't feel so, at ease doing what they're doing right. Yeah, Democrats built this with their Republican friends because they're controlled by the same. Both main parties, I would say most corporate parties have already pledged to, Israel. So we won't expect, yeah, it's a Muslim, sounds like, it's very catchy, right? Wow, it both for his fans and oh my God, I can't believe this monster did a Muslim ban. And then the other one said that I'm so glad our dear president placed a Muslim ban. What people don't stop to think is that there is banning Muslims and then there is bombing them to death, to oblivion. And that's what the Democrats have been doing so well. And that's why, Hillary got the nickname the Butcher of Libya, So again, let's take responsibility for all of this. Let's stop teaching democracy to anyone, because ours is pretty incomplete. We have two.
Right, no, we still got Cat's laptop, so.
We still
yes.
have mine still going.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Let me get my sound back on.
Yep.
I don't know if it matters so much. Okay, so if reelected, Trump has promised to use totalitarian tactics to carry out the largest mass detention and deportation program in the nation's history. How do you think this will play out? And I'll start with Ida. Joseph had to leave at 8, unfortunately. So you can unplug that because it's not working. There you go.
I think it depends a lot on like how much full cooperation we see, and given like the way that repression has been happening with like pro-Palestine activism, and the way that we've seen like deportations be ramped up anyway, is very concerning that there might be this like full cooperation and this like rapid development of new like pipelines by which to force people out of the country. I only hope that we can like look back at Trump's last term and like the kind of like things having been in some ways more restrained than we might have thought, more impeded than we might have thought. And I hope that we'll see more of the like centrist neoliberal leadership of the Democratic Party kind of performatively impede things. But I'm honestly really pessimistic about that. I think that like Biden's administration and the entire Senate and most of the House have demonstrated like little to no concern for people that might potentially get deported by Trump.
They're gonna be running on the same platform for you.
Yeah.
Do you like to add anything, Eduardo? My computer's being passed around.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of opposition, even more this time around, because I think now we're more prepared. We know what to expect. I think immigrants even are more prepared now. I remember working at the same place where I'm working right now. There were patients who stopped coming to the hospital because they were afraid that they would be doing these redadas. They would just come and take everyone. It didn't happen as much as people feared. So again, let's replace fear with strategy. Let's be prepared for whatever he plans to do. I hope, this, very principled Congresswoman starts caring about children in cage again and, immigration again, because she seems to be very supportive of whatever the current administration is doing. For people who cannot see, that's that picture of this famous actress, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, crying for the poor children in cage. That she hasn't been doing much lately, even though, there are still kids being separated from their parents. Immigrants are still going through hell in this country, but they're not talking much about it.
She had a town hall over here, and she was Zionists. She platformed them for now, but didn't talk at all about sexual abuse committed by the Israeli military. That's been proven time and time again. Did repeat mostly debunked claims.
Right on brand, right on brand.
Did he try to run for Chuck Schumer's seat? So she's saving democracy.
Wow, that seat must stink, man. Yeah, so I think there's going to be a lot of opposition again. I think we're going to be able to ready to fight, and I think that's another thing that having a democratic government does to most people who call themselves activists. It's complacency. Everybody just cross their arms and think they're living through paradise. And I'm so sorry, most of us down here, in the peanut gallery, we are not living through paradise. We're struggling down here. Thank you.
Yeah. Get the microphone back here. There you go.
Excuse me, yet.
There you go.
Next question. I was hoping Joseph would still be here for this, but unfortunately not. More than 41,800 people have been killed, at least that's the figure we're getting, in a year of Israel's genocide against Palestinians in Gaza, and the US has spent $22.76 billion in support of Israel's war and operations against the Houthis in Yemen, according to a report by Brown University's Watson Institute. This is under the Biden administration. What do we expect under a Trump administration?
I mean, I'm not sure like how different to expect anything to go between the two and between like the developments of the broader states dealing with the situation. I know what Trump said he like wants to do, and it's mostly things just that would fast track and simplify the whole thing. I know that if Jared Kushner's in his office again, then that's probably going to mean certain focuses on like trying to improve relations with Saudi Arabia, as opposed to where they're kind of going downhill right now. But overall, I think with either administration, we haven't really been given anything to think that Harris would be any different than Biden would be on this. Overall, I think my big worry is that Israel is going to just keep expanding their war to new fronts. They're going to keep trying to wipe out everybody in every country they decide to start a war with in order to distract from the fact that they can't complete their wars elsewhere. I worry that Trump might get the US military more directly and fully involved than Biden has been willing to do. I don't know for sure that Harris wouldn't. I'm mostly just like,
Troops being sent to Israel?
yeah,
Really?
yeah. So we're getting there, and yeah.
So it's done.
Oh, God.
And all of this while our like organizing on the streets and stuff is getting increasingly like heading towards criminalization. So I do think we need to
Which is-
figure out how
which
we
is
get
this
leverage.
Question I have here, and one that I know a lot of people are concerned with. How can peaceful protesters protect themselves in this climate? What should they be expecting, regardless of who's in, to be honest?
I mean, for all that I've done, I'm still not on Canary mission, so that's cool. And I do think like you should really just try to do as much as you can and hope for the best. I've been in jail. It sucked. I'm a trans woman. I got beaten and starved and not provided a bed and kept freezing for like 28 hours. And like it's 28 hours and then you're done. I don't think it's like most people aren't going to experience that. Certainly not for like what could by every gauge be called peaceful protest. But I do think like we need to be like fearless about this, and just hope that things don't get more repressive and violent. And we need to prepare for them as they start to head that direction. And we need to adjust our strategies to be more capable of escape and more capable of saving each other. But in the end, it's really important that we keep up the fight, because I do think it like is the only way we can push them at all on the back foot. It's the only way we can slow down the development of further repression and the simplification of like the public's view of us as like belligerent versus us as like peace activists or civil rights activists, or however we want to frame it. I don't know if you want to get into.
Sure, I think, to invest more in efforts to create this local network of support, because if we cannot trust the federal government, we try to occupy spaces wherever we can within the community, within the local level. Most of what Trump tried to do, I think, what blocked many of his attempts were local initiatives with the, sanctuary laws and things like that. And we had an example here in this county that sometimes the local government doesn't help much, right? Like when we tried to stop cooperation with ICE, and Calvin Ball, took ICE's side. So we have to be very careful of the friendly liberal. I'm sure Malcolm X said it in a much better way, but yes, with that ally who was actually not that much. Most of these repression against Palestinian supporters of the Palestinian people are at universities, which are among the most liberal institutions in this country, and they're still capable of doing that. And again, going back to the immigration situation, I think people tend to forget when they talk about the other party, Ms. Harris. Oh, Mrs. Harris, that she, people are creating this fanfic around her as if she was never in power when she was, the district attorney. Is that what you call it, right?
Yeah.
In California, she was, in favor of handing, teenage, quote unquote, lawbreakers who were illegally or undocumented in the country to ICE. And that's how local authorities cooperate with this escalate towards fascism. And so we have to fight that at the local level as much as we can, and make sure that we don't treat anyone as beyond suspicion in the government. Thank you.
Hand it off. Does anyone in the audience, either online or in the room here, want to ask a question of the two panelists? Al?
Yeah. Sort of from DFA, is it Emil Hill? Is that?
Oh, me, Eduardo.
Eduardo.
I'm from Friends of Latin America.
Friends of Latin America, not DSA at all.
That's, yeah.
Oh,
He's from
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because, okay, I really appreciated everything you said. I wanted to ask you whether you see any real hope, because it's the only hope I have, is in building a movement in support of the emerging party. It seems clear the Democratic Party is as problematic, or in some ways worse. I mean, the Harris-Biden policy towards Ukraine is probably worse than Trump, certainly.
But given that fact, is there any real hope that we can join together in support of third parties? And a problem I see with that is, and I'm sorry to give this purpose, I'm really disappointed Joseph isn't here, because I wanted to ask him, since our revolution, after being in support of uncommitted, then without any knowledge of how, what the process was, decided they were gonna back Harris. I'm curious about how when institutions that are supposed to be sort of progressive won't even do that, how can we And together? I think it's to not let ourselves be gaslit, not let ourselves to feel guilty for whatever results the election have. We have no obligation to vote for any party. They have to conquer our votes, and so far, none of the main corporate parties have conquered our votes. Just keep on trying to build that third, fourth, fifth parties. And, like I said, do not treat these people as celebrities, like the AOC and Bernie and so forth, because in the end, they'll buckle. And they have been buckling, Bernie's love for Biden has been reflected so many times, and I don't know why we still have hope for that, With all due respect, I still have this action figure, which I'm trying to sell on eBay. Something worthy cost, and it comes with a mug, stickers, and buttons.
And real quick, before we get to Jen, I should add that, Hal brings Our Revolution National is, backed Kamala Harris for president. I just want to make clear that was not a local chapter decision. Our chapter has not done that. And I was considering putting this on the agenda for tonight. I didn't get a chance to, but we can still do this before we adjourn tonight if we want. But we can, for example, vote to endorse Jill Stein and the Green Party if we wanted to tonight, as a, sort of a protest, endorsement against the current administration's, genocide policy. So just to say, we don't have to necessarily follow along with what Our Revolution National has done. We're supposed to be a bottom up, not a top down organization. And so, yeah, we can revisit that. But yeah, Ginny, you had.
Just a quick question. You were talking about changing the political system, which I agree needs changing. What do you think about the DC proposal? I just read it in the paper, so, ranking and
yes.
also allowing independents to vote.
Yes, I think that would be
Apparently
great.
the mayor there doesn't seem to like it, the Democratic Party.
Of
though.
course. Yes, of course. They take us for granted, they want us to be in the little corral, people of color, immigrants, poor people. They want to count on us forever and ever,
Great.
They don't want to empower us. And that's a problem.
I would like maybe in a primary to be able to pick a couple of people.
It would make a third party more viable
Mhm.
choice, and that's why they don't want it.
Yeah.
And then also,
They said they had trouble counting.
and they also don't want to let, they don't want to let independents vote in the primary.
Exactly, that's.
But yeah, no, good question.
Yeah, very good.
Any other questions in person or online, before we wrap up? Yeah. no.
I don't need to dominate, so
Yeah,
anyone
no,
else that had any.
I didn't see anybody on Zoom.
What's the person from DSA's name?
My name is Ida.
Florida?
Ida.
Ida, I'm sorry, Sierra Mass, Ida. So I can't vote for Harris. But when folks from communities like the trans community talked about their concerns about Trump, that really is moving to me. And I don't want it to, I understand the Democrats play that slice and dice game where there are some, I don't want to use the word minority, but some groups that they are less awful to than Republicans are. So I guess I'm asking you, Ida, but also everyone else, how do we balance that, right? How do we say, okay, they're evil, but they're not so evil that I can't vote for them? I'm kind of at the genocide point. You can't commit genocide, I don't vote for them. But is there more, can we be more nuanced than that?
So one thing I think is really important to understand about how the political system in this country works as opposed to in much of Europe and much of Latin America and much of the world, is that political parties in this country are basically franchises that you can just enter. Like they don't have centralized authority over state ballot lines. They have major influence because they have huge amounts of money. And they do have their own internal party system of like the DNC, the RNC. But for I guess my thing about this is that a party and what it believes and its platform is all fairly plastic. And most importantly, it's largely influenced by the same people as the other one. Like it is like a donor class that has most control in these two existing parties that have locked the system into a multiple times realigning situation over the last century and a half. I think that we can't really look at it and think there's a party solution to this. The DSA, we have this is one of the biggest points of disagreement in the organization. We have people who want to create a third party. We have people who want to support existing third parties. We have people who want to break altogether from ever supporting any Democrats versus various layers. Personally, I'm a believer in the party surrogate strategy, which is that you're not trying to simply build an electoral power mechanism that attempts to build and control ballot lines throughout the country. You're trying to be able to dominate any election without regard to what your formal relationship to that state's election system is. So if that means and this is largely something that Working Families Party has implemented, where they've ran independents, where they've supported Democrats. I think they've supported other third parties as well. The idea is that you're trying to have the power to contest democratic power on multiple levels, like electoral among others. And you ideally are moving things all together as a political system towards something. And I don't know for sure what that's going to mean for how the parties that are existing in the time are transforming. As a socialist, I think by building working class organization generally, you increase working class control in the political system. And whether that control is able to make use of an existing party, which I doubt in the long run would ever lead us to socialism, versus whether it has to start with its own electoral party from the start. I just think it's kind of like a null question, but I definitely don't think that we should think of the good stuff and the bad stuff that comes from either party as being from the same people. I think that the Democrats legalized discrimination against trans girls in schools on sports grounds, on bathroom use. Democrats in some states, there have been Democratic legislators who have voted in favor of bans on our medical care. So it's not like they as a party have a party line that they've stuck to in any meaningful way. It is true that a lot of progressive people attempt to run as Democrats. It's also true a lot of them end up getting kind of corrupted by being politicians. But in the end, I think we really have to be building a frankly, a revolutionary working class organization in this country and international, most importantly, it needs to be international. And that needs to think bigger than electoral contest.
Can I add a thing to that? I appreciate you answering the question, and conceptually, I agree with you, Ida. This is not a one election kind of conversation. It really is a lot of the root causes, all the power structure and the corruption for the entire system that really exploit people, expensive people to advance their own power. But on the other hand, viscerally, emotionally, there is a real calculation where I have a trans kid. Actually, both of my kids live in Battleground State. One just got in Michigan, he's a student on campus, and they have polling stations, and updating their addresses and all that is very convenient. So I urged him to update his voter registration. And then he said the conversations the students have are really, they're not really excited to vote for Harris, but they know Trump is worse, especially the girls, female students. And then to me, I understand, I'm never going to tell my own kids how they vote. The other kid who lives in Pennsylvania, another very, very important battleground state, is my trans kid. So again, theoretically, conceptually, on the principle level, I don't want to vote for anyone who can support the genocide, either party, and,
Mhm.
you know, theoretical or, you know, Harris hasn't really done anything to show that she would be different from Biden. But my trans kid said she would vote for Harris because she feels, and I understand that as parents too, that my husband and I both feel that Trump will pose a clear and present danger to the trans people. It's not even just on the theoretical level, what would
Mm.
happen if he does this or not. It's pretty clearly spread as spelled out for us. Porn would be declared illegal across all state and federal level, and trans people would be lumped into that category, right? Trans people are just pornography, so you don't exist, you can be arrested. So I think to have this kind of conversation, especially with people who are in a community whose life will be at stake. Do I hate the Democratic Party that don't think they have offered enough protection for immigrants, for trans people, for women, all this reproductive right? They have years to codify Roe v. Wade. They have done nothing, even when they had tremendous power to do that. So don't tell me that, oh, I'm all for women's reproductive right. That's all BS. That's all just going on in my head, but in my heart, and then people who are facing that kind of danger, at least that's how they perceive it, and I think we should respect that. It's
Mm.
really hard to have that conversation to say, well, Trump is just, the Democratic Party is just that. Because on certain issues, there's a matter of difference, not just in degree, but in kind.
Mm.
So to have, I think to have both conversations, how do we address the underlying issues while acknowledging the reality is pretty cruel and more cruel to some people than others. I can imagine people like my husband who's white and, you know, he probably will, if we just put him in a vacuum and compare him to my trans daughter who's biracial, transgender, you know, that would be a different category. So people's calculations would be different. And so when we have these conversations, I really do appreciate that you're asking that, right? Principal level, this is what I decide to do, but I hear these concerns. I don't know how to do that. You know, it's a struggle for me.
I think
sure.
that's definitely true. I mean, this is very much a situation with a specific Republican Party, with a specific Republican candidate, with a specific Democratic opposition. A big part of my like absolute ambiguity and abstraction in my response is the fact that in the last like few days, we've had two Democratic senatorial candidates essentially throw us under the bus. We have had in the last few months, Biden roll back some protections that were given to us in the like equality, like executive declaration regarding like trans girls in schools, where like Title IX still protects them from full like total class discrimination, but on a case-by-case basis, they can be discriminated against in sports. So I guess I'm just like, things are feeling more in flux than ever right now for me with the identity of the Democratic Party's like kind of consensus on things. I do know like Manchin left the party because he was sick of progressive tendencies gaining some ground. And that's really funny to me. I kind of expect more of that. Sinema left the party for the same reason. But on the other hand, I do think that there is still a centrist majority that has no particular values beyond statecraft and beyond their investments. And so it's really, I think like speaking to people, I do think in most ways and pretty much always, I do think personally voting for Harris is probably the harm reduction vote if you're voting for one of the plausible candidates. I also just could never tell somebody to vote for a genocider. Like, and it sucks because I do think I think on Palestine, Trump will probably be worse, but that is hypothetical. And it is just like, I can't even imagine trying to persuade somebody, and I'm increasingly just like especially on things like trans issues where there's been so little real development and so much like presumption of assistance on the federal level. There's been tons of there's been like Maryland, DC, Washington, California. There's been a bunch of Democratic like state Democratic parties that have been huge for us. And a lot of those same state Democratic parties have been good for other communities and good on other issues. They're all in flux as well. But I guess my point is like, it's really important to look at the specific actors that you're dealing with. Like we're dealing with Donald Trump, we're dealing with Harris and her relationship with the Biden administration. We're dealing with a Republican Party that was not this amicable to anti-trans stuff like 5 years ago. Donald Trump, with having Betsy DeVos in the education role, brought in this huge lobby that didn't exist prior, that tried to push bathroom bills in like 2018 and with like little to no success. But in 2020, they pushed like like I think it was like 80 or something bans around the country in state legislatures. In 2023, it was over 500, and this year it's been over 600. They passed 80 of them last year. They passed 50 something of them so far this year. We've watched the Republican Party change and adapt to a new kind of scapegoat, which is like traditionally the thing they tend to focus on. And meanwhile, the Democratic Party hasn't polarized against that in a consistent and useful fashion. And it might be heading that direction, but because of recent events, I'm really doubting that there's any real momentum behind that. AOC is like maybe more specifically pro-trans, but most of the party I just haven't seen much out of.
I just want to add that, luckily, and that is like a tough moral dilemma to think about, like I've got this principle of like not wanting to award somebody doing a genocide, but at the same time, like I also have this principle of like care for marginalized communities who like might be more at threat under a Trump presidency versus a Kamala presidency, and like those, very valid principles kind of conflicting. And like, I'm just glad that we are not in a swing state where like the answer to that really has consequences if you don't quote unquote pick the right one. And so I don't even know my answer to that moral dilemma. And I'm just happy that we're in Maryland and I don't have to think about it that much. And I probably will just vote third party knowing there's no real consequences. And like, if people are mad at that, be mad at the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, but mostly the Democratic Party for not crafting a voting system where I actually have to vote like like people's lives depend on it. But yeah.
Oh, by the way, the Title IX, adding trans to be the protection. I heard a testimony from a Moms for Liberty member at the school board meeting last week. So can you trust that? But she said superintendent for Howard County Public School System has delayed the implementation of that Title IX, the new rules. That really piqued my interest. First of all, that's not kosher. That's not good. They can't be. They could face funding threat or anything. And then that's just it's a slap in the face of, well, they're all for trans protection. I mean, they're very outspoken. Unlike the genocide issue, they're very, very outspoken. They're allies for the LGBTQ issue. So I was going to ask the LGBTQ coordinator if that's correct, because Moms for Liberty member says something, although I would have guessed that they would have lied about something opposite, in fact, right? If the superintendent doesn't want to protect the trans people, then she's happy to hear that, right? So, but that, just want to put that on.
I wonder what it is, because with the Title IX thing, there's a lot of good, and then there's some very specific bad. So I wonder which thing the school board is deciding not to roll with.
Based on what I know about the superintendent, I don't know if you can delineate the good versus the bad.
Yeah, I think that school board races are definitely something that like progressive organizations should focus on, because they're generally nonpartisan, which means there's like less barrier to entry. And like it's, I think, a really good it's a really good place to try to like hold power. Though like what a school board does has a major impact on the community, on children most especially. So I think that's like DSA, we passed a thing last year to try to focus on school races this year, and it hasn't really gone as ambitiously as I'd hoped for, but
Yeah. Well, yeah, so thank you, everybody. I think that was all the audience questions that we had. before we did adjourn, I just wanted to put it out there. Did people want to motion to endorse Green Party, or should we just, it wasn't on the agenda, and so we can just stick with not endorsing?
People are out of town from our steering too, so I
Right.
think maybe.
We should
steer-
we should do this as steering.
Okay,
Right.
all right,
I
cool.
would like to. share
Okay.
that.
We can, yeah, we'll table that. We'll table that discussion then. But yeah, so unless, thank you, Ida, thank you, Eduardo, thank you, Joseph. Unless there are any final comments, questions, concerns, we good to adjourn?
Yes.
Cool. I motion to adjourn. Second, all in support, aye.
I.
All opposed, nay. Awesome. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so
Yes.
much for coming.
Yeah.
Francis, is this yours?
Yeah, that's.
Okay. That little thing I have to give back to the lady.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, we have.
Zoom now.
Oh, shit. I need to give this to the lady. I know, it's so frustrating.